a negative day on the markets and pretty much in line with what we've seen in Europe as well. US markets still trying to find their feet, and it's all about Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke today. Give us your view in terms of what we've seen in today's session, because it seems that most people are kind of divided. Is it risk aversion that we're seeing coming to the fore, or is it just a bit of profit taking?
Well, I think we were doing quite nicely up until about 4 o'clock in the markets, and this afternoon, there was a very sharp fall in the Saudi Arabian index. At one stage it was down nearly 10%. I think it finished off just under 7%, and of course that London started to trade a lot lower on that news. But generally commodities have been holding up well. You've just shown the gold price up over $10, platinum doing quite well. But Mr. Bernanke this evening, he will give us an indication of what he thinks the US economy is going to do, and that will give an indication also what whether they're going to put more money into the quantitative easing, or whether they can actually now start to withdraw from that.
Sasol was down just over 3% today, sitting at 369 Rand 25 cents. We've got a local currency that is below 7 Rand to the dollar. We've seen oil prices rallying significantly, and that prompted quite a bit of buying into Sasol. Is that a surprise for you that we're seeing Sasol down around 3% today?
Well, I thought there must be some profit taking has done pretty well, but certainly I think with the the price of oil still around the $111, $112 for Brent oil. Only you can ascribe it to probably the stronger rand.
Let's touch on Remgro, also down 2.5%. We saw Implats shedding 1.7%. So pretty much a mixed bag in terms of what we're seeing dragging the top 40 index lower.
Yes, I think so. You had, Anglos were up at one stage quite substantially in the morning, and then I'm not sure exactly where they finished, but it's certainly when I left the office they were down. And yet, of course, Anglo Platinum had a very good day, but of course that's been under pressure recently.
In terms of the top 40, the top of the top 40, Nedbank gaining almost 2%, Truworths up almost 2%, Richemont also doing quite well today, and some of the companies that actually gained over 1%, the rest it seems were pretty much plunged into negative territory.
Yes, well, Richemont had been doing quite well, but it's had a bad few days and it's been under pressure, so I suppose that's really a bounce from those oversold levels.
We also saw manufacturing under the spotlight today here in South Africa. PMI stabilizing, relatively high level is what most say for February at 54.8 from 54.6. So a slight tick up there. What was disappointing is the Chinese PMI number, which ticked down further but still above that key 50 level.
Yeah, as long as it remains above 50, I'm quite happy, because it's expected that there will be. The Chinese are trying to slow the economy and are raising bank reserve rate requirements and possibly looking to raise interest rates in order to slow their economy. So, if you can get a soft landing in China without the economy going into recession, I think that's very good for global growth.
When you say soft landing, what kind of growth levels are you alluding to? Some say a hard landing could be growth of around 5%.
Well, I think that would be a very hard landing. Their 5-year plan that they've just released now aims for growth of about 7.5% over the next 5 years. But I think, or 7%, and it was in the previous 5 years 7.5. But as you know, they were trading in double-digit figures. So I think if the Chinese economy was only to grow by 5%, that would generate a hard landing. But I don't see that. I think they'll probably be successful in cooling their economy.
Greg, let's zoom into some of the companies that were out with results today. Copper miner Metarex's half-year adjusted headline earnings per share jumping 152%. We saw copper production up, cobalt production also jumping, and that jumped around 26% higher as well. We know that they've got transformer challenges at their Ruwashi mine. Overall for Metarex, and we've also known that they've got a hedge in place that is set to expire later on this year. Overall bullish on a company such as Metarex?
Yes, I think so. Linked to the copper price, I'm bullish on the copper price. It's just below $10,000 per metric ton, and I think that certainly, as your previous guest alluded to, that certainly with the floods in Australia and what happened in New Zealand, there'll be a lot of reconstruction going on. But of course, when the US housing market starts to recover, that will also give copper some support. But I think there's there's been a lot of stockpiling of copper as well as the price going, but of course China uses a lot of copper and will continue to do so in the future. So I'm quite bullish on Metarex. Those problems you alluded to in the Congo, I think they're getting those under control.
And as you said, Riet Tennyson from RMB was saying we don't really know what the stockpiles look like for copper, and it seems that many are talking about a deficit this year. Are you also of the view that we could see copper prices maintain around that $10,000 an ounce level, a ton level rather, or perhaps even closer to 11,000?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll go as high as that going, but I would be surprised if it didn't stay in this current range of about $9,500 to $10,000.
Let's touch on Merafe and more on the ferrochrome side of things. Headline earnings per share for the year to the end of December totaled 11 cents. That's from a loss of 6 cents previously, so a turnaround that came through for the ferrochrome company.
Yes, well, don't forget in the previous, when the global financial crisis hit, there was a lot of, the production was halted and cut back significantly. So since that has happened, they've been able to increase their output. But I still think that the company is hampered by the fact that, in order to expand, they need electricity, and, it's not freely or generously available for these big commercial projects. So I think that could be. But interesting and nice to see the 2-cent dividend from the company, and of course the price of ferrochrome, that looks like it's in an upward trajectory, and that could still help it going forward.
Let's touch on Steinhoff as well. We saw margins increasing slightly and headline earnings basically maintained at around 1.6 billion rand. So are you happy with those kind of numbers, and a company that is impacted by the local currency as well?
Yes, I was a little bit disappointed by the results, but they are understandable. They've generated a lot of business offshore, so the strong rand certainly would have hurt their earnings. But I think their purchase of Conforama will take some time to bed down. But essentially, when those synergies start coming through, then I think the stock will do very well. But I expect it to consolidate in the short term.
Greg, just going back to the overall themes that we've seen, how much of a concern is Libya, Middle East, Oman recently with all the protests? How much of that is a concern for you going forward in terms of affecting market sentiment?
No, well, I think generally it's its effect on the price of oil, and I think it's a concern also because the Middle East is a volatile region, and anything that will upset the delicate balance there, I think, is a cause for concern. But I think you could see, if the Libyan situation is resolved sooner rather than later, could see oil coming off quite a bit and could go back below $100 a barrel. So I think the quicker they can find a solution, the better.
Which sector are you most bullish about when it comes to the JSE all shares? Some say that the resource sector is definitely the place to be.
Yes, well, look, I'm biased. I like resources. I've always liked them. I like Anglos. I like Billiton. These companies are, obviously, everything depends on China and whether China's growth continues to come through. But generally, on the forward price earnings, these companies are relatively cheap, and they're doing exceptionally well. And I think the underlying commodities that they are selling, those prices should remain strong.